Ready? KC review set number 6. Start it. Internal resources, external resources, I do not propose, and that is the in support of the with reference to which needs to be done. I do not wish, I do not say, as the case may be, to tell us. We were told that cannot be said. It is suggested that is not likely to be for the time being. Just now, some reference, copy of which, deficit financing in the light of the, it is said that yet to be dearness allowance, what he is, sources of revenue, balance of payments, balance of payment position, sterling balances, vice chancellors, financial year. We would ask that the in recent year, in recent months, in recent weeks, in recent days, in recent times, somehow or the other, primary education, higher education, secondary education, what will be the, on my part, on your part, on their part, state of affairs, because he was, if he will, it is absolutely essential, should be borne in mind, there should not be, we are told that, has taken over charge of the, generally speaking, go a long way, taxpayer, I would not have, they should not be, such other things, side by side, in many directions, is said to have, it is said that the, stated that the consumer goods consummate with the, it is hoped that the, as for the, from the other, as it were, I will not say again and again, should not be done in the same way, as long as, so long as that this is, in as much as well considered, this has been in great detail by virtue of the, it should be remembered that as far as I can, as far as I know, it would be better, it should not be in the next few years, in the next few months, in the next few weeks, in the next few days, in the next 5 years, in the next 5-year plan to set up long-term, short-term, invite the attention of the House, invite the attention of the honorable members, medium-sized, large-sized, this will, it is appeared, scope of the rate of interest. We know that the, as has been, they should have been, it would mean, it is well known, statement of objects and reasons brought forward, look forward much more than the, certainly been, welfare state, terms and conditions, terms of reference, there is hardly or another, so many times in view of this, to do away with, doing away with, done away with, might have been Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, and there is no question to impress upon the nuclear weapons as it was at the rate of the, in this behalf, according to their, I shall now, as laid down, in some other, to certain other, in certain other, for a number of years, I do not know, we do not know, in the case of the, what happens, what happened, what is happening somewhere else, is that the, whether it is, where it is, in many countries, that there should be, this is being done, not merely, it is not merely to draw upon for their own, you may have all these subjects at all levels, at all events, some time ago, some time back. ये फ्रेजोग्राफी की आउटलाइन का तो आपको पैसेज में भी मिल जाएगा जो ऑलरेडी उस दिन वेडनेसडे को बोला था लास्ट वीक में. अब आप बात लिखेंगे डिक्टेशंस. कंटेंट की, और जो आउटलाइन आपसे नहीं बनेगी इसी सेट के एकदम पीछे दे रखी है लास्ट वाले पेज पे, आप इससे कॉपी कर लेंगे इसको। आउट ऑफ दिस फिर भी कोई डाउट आता है तो आप पूछ लेंगे। रेडी, पहले हाई पे लिखेंगे फिर लो पे लिखेंगे। स्टार्ट इट। Mr. Vice Chairman, I would now like to make a few observations on the Ministry of Education. Education is basic to any national regeneration. It is true that it does not bring any return as our other projects do, as for instance, the steel projects or the irrigation projects do. But this is the investment that is designed to help building up of the human material. It is agreed that education has expanded after independence and during the plan periods, but it is a matter for concern that the content of education has not been equal to our expectations. Even today, we are engaged in experimenting with all types of education from the basic stage up to the university level. It is not clear, I presume, that the basic stage up to the university level. It is not clear, I presume, that the basic pattern of education of which so much was said and written is accepted as success even today. Where do we stand with regard to the basic pattern? It seems to be the position that all arguments are in favor of that type of education, but all proof is against the success of such a type of education. Where does the government stand with regard to this type of education? We swore by the basic type of education because it was discovered by the father of the nation. But if it has been a failure, why should not the government say that that is the position? Then again, take secondary education and also collegiate education. 3 years ago, it was said that all universities should have 3-year degree courses, and some universities which were reluctant to accept this reform were more or less compelled to do so, and they accepted it. Now, certain universities find that this scheme is not working satisfactorily, and they feel that they should have a 2-year course in the college before students could enter the degree course. I mention this to show that this internal tinkering with education should stop, and it should not go on like this. This uncertainty is not only with regard to the main objective of education, the main structure of education, the main structure of education from the primary to the collegiate level, but also with regard to the courses of studies and also with regard to the language or medium of instruction. Mr. Chairman, up to the secondary stage, it has been accepted that the medium of instruction should be the regional language. If we take into consideration the affiliated colleges, we will notice that the teachers are subjected to such humiliating conditions that it is not possible for them to discharge their duties to their students, any sense of responsibility or any moral values in their lives. I therefore, sir, feel that it is necessary to be more careful about the preservation of academic freedom to teachers. Sir, we are grateful to the Education Ministry and to the University Grants Commission for upgrading the salaries of teachers in the central universities. Yet, a great disparity prevails in the salaries of teachers of central universities and state universities and affiliated colleges, and this disparity is causing a lot of heartburning and a lot of difficulties. As one connected with education, I may say that there is not much such a marked difference in the quality of teachers serving in the central universities and in the state universities and in affiliated colleges as to justify the great disparity in the salaries of teachers of these institutions. I feel, sir, that we must keep in our mind the remarks of the University Grants Commission made in their earlier annual report with regard to teacher salaries. We are not only to provide adequate salaries to teachers of affiliated colleges, but also to teachers of secondary schools. We must remember, sir, that a great majority of students study in affiliated colleges and the quality of education is largely determined by the quality of work that is done in affiliated colleges. For improvement in the quality of teaching, improvement in the quality of teaching, improvement in living conditions is also very necessary. The University Grants Commission has invited our attention in its report to the appalling conditions in which teachers have to live. But unfortunately, the University Grants Commission has to admit that it does not seem likely that we shall be able to make anything more than the marginal contribution towards this practical need. I feel that the University Grants Commission should pay more attention to the solution of this problem than has so far been paid by it and the Education Ministry, and that the government should not grudge funds to the University Grants Commission for making adequate arrangements for improving living conditions of teachers who are expected to train the citizens of the country. Sir, in the University Grants Commission report, it is maintained that rupees 12,000 should be granted to every affiliated college for the welfare of the teaching staff, and that efforts should be made to provide them with quarters, and that too in the vicinity of the college where they teach. ये 855 वर्ड्स हैं और इसकी जो स्पीड है हंड्रेड 10 के आसपास है. आप इससे कम पे लिखेंगे नेक्स्ट वाला कंटेंट. रीडिंग स्टार्टेड. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, I rise to support the Plantations Labor Amendment Bill brought up by the government for our consideration. Sir, the sad plight of millions of toiling people who sweat on various plantations in the country to earn valuable foreign exchange for us is really too much to be expressed in words. These workers live and work in most inhuman and pitiable conditions. These plantations include tea, coffee, cinchona, rubber, etc. And as we know, tea alone is one of the major foreign exchange earners of our country. But sir, it is indeed most regrettable that notwithstanding a lapse of 62 years since our independence, these workers who earn crores and crores of rupees by way of foreign exchange have to live in most miserable conditions. They live in houses that are most insecure and collapse frequently, and when these workers die as a result of these collapse, their guardians or their dependents do not get even due compensation for the loss that they have to bear. Unhygienic living in distant and far-flung areas, compounded with lack of medical and educational facilities, make their life utterly miserable. These plantation workers have to live in abject poverty like slaves of their employers, and as we know, most of these plantations are still foreign owned establishments, last vestiges of the colonial rule, the British rule, and as I said, it is a matter of deep regret for all of us that despite enacting an act, the Plantations Labor Act 2001, we have not yet been able to affect any improvement in their conditions. I think the employers alone are not responsible for their miserable conditions. We are also as much responsible as they are, because although we could enforce the enactment and we could improve their conditions much earlier, we have failed in doing so. Their conditions much earlier, we have failed in doing so. Sir, on the 9th May 2003, this House, the Rajya Sabha, decided that a joint committee should be appointed to look into the desired amendment and put up a draft as early as possible for our consideration. On the 26th May 2003, the Lok Sabha also adopted our resolution, our motion, with the result that a 45-member committee in which 15 representatives were from the Rajya Sabha and 30 from the Lok Sabha was appointed to look into the matter. The National Integration Council, however, stated that if universities are to exchange professors, if they have to develop freely, then there should be the common medium of instruction, namely English and Hindi. Now, at the latest National Integration Council meeting, we are told that the medium of instruction in the colleges should also be the regional language ultimately, and if that comes to pass, I ask, how will national integration be achieved? It is permissible to envisage a stage if the scheme of the National Integration Council is implemented, where different universities will have different medium of instruction, and the men that will be drawn from these universities will have to man the judiciary of the land and the All India services, but they will not be able to serve in a state other than the one in which they were educated. How can integrations be achieved? We are working at cross purposes. It is time that a high power body was appointed to hammer out a national scheme of education having integration as the basic aim and to implement it systematically. The present method of meddling every stage of education, the present climate in which we are not clear about the medium of instruction at different stages, is causing concern to the parents, to the pupils, and weakening the country in the progress. This is a major problem at this stage of the development of the country. Then, Mr. Vice Chairman, I could pass on to the Ministry of Transport and Communications. According to this ministry, we are to build a system of national highways, provincial or state highways, villages upwards, but the central government is concerned with the construction of national highways. It is good to have a fine system of national highways. It is also serve as a physical link for integrating the nation. It also serve as a physical link for integrating the nation. It is good, but this planning of construction of national highways without regard to the development of railways and the development of industries in the regions in which the highways are proposed to be constructed will be something beyond our means at the present moment, assuming that we have a network of national highways as are they to be put to immediate use, unless you have industries, small, big or medium, coming along the highways, unless they assure you a fair return for the investment, it is not desirable to have a system of highway for the sake of mere transport of passengers. In other words, we should have a scheme of priorities for the national highways so that they can be looked after. ये 830 प्लस वर्ड है, 35 के आसपास, 100 की स्पीड है. अब आप लेस देन 100 पे लिखेंगे. रेडी, स्टार्ट इट. Mr. Vice Chairman, I was speaking about the need for developing a strong UN delegation. I wish that the Honorable Prime Minister would give his attention to this aspect of the matter, particularly in view of the fact that in the next decade or two, politics all over the world would take on a complex character, and it is necessary that men are trained from now on for taking part in international affairs. In the UK and the United States, such delegations are built with men who have wide knowledge of international affairs, and there should be other qualification for a man to be included in such a delegation. In this connection, I should also like to mention that it is time for government to develop sound conventions regarding the conduct of foreign affairs. In the United States, they have accepted the principle of bipartisan consultation on important affairs of policy. For example, when President Kennedy stood for election, President Eisenhower, even during the period of the conduct of the campaigning of President Kennedy, kept him informed about major developments in foreign affairs. We have seen our government sending troops out of this country to the Congo, and at that time I had raised the point that before troops left our country for any assignments of an unusual character like the Congo assignment, members of the opposition should be informally consulted. There will be no question of any leakage of information whatever if leaders in the opposition are consulted on important aspects of foreign policy. The consultative committee of the External Affairs Ministry does not go some way to meet the needs of exchanging information about foreign affairs, but the informal consultation of the kind that I mentioned, where the leader of the opposition and leaders of other parties are called and told by the Prime Minister about unusual developments, would strengthen the conviction that the foreign policy of the country has the support not only of the Congress party but also of the entire country. I was speaking about our external publicity, and it is subject on which I think I can speak with some confidence as I have been an old-time newspaperman in this country. The material which is sent out to foreign countries is extremely scrappy and useless. There is included in these messages some statement of what this minister was saying somewhere. This committee was to submit its report on the first day of the 115th session of the Rajya Sabha, that was in 2003, but this committee had to be granted 3 examinations and the report was ultimately available on the 3rd March 2005. At that time, as we all know, the so-called JP's movement of total revolution was at its peak. Within 2 or 3 months, the national emergency had to be declared, and during the emergency, priorities had changed, and we could not just affect this desired improvement at the time, and we could not bring about this legislation. And then the Janta rule and the Lokdal rule. For 30 months, they were in power, but they too, although they try to pose to be the champions of the downtrodden and the workers, failed to deliver the goods, and that is why today we are going to consider the report of that committee that was presented to the government in 2005. Therefore, we are also equally responsible for not ameliorating their conditions and their plight. The committee had to consider 120 memorandum giving views and suggestions from various unions and associations, and 59 witnesses appeared before the committee, and that committee itself came to the conclusion that in various areas, even the barest minimum facilities such as arrangement for supply, wholesome drinking water, latrines, urinals, provision of qualified doctors had not been provided, though these amenities are a must under the Act. The Act has been there, but we could not enforce it. We could not implement it only because the employers did not want it. They did not want to give to the workers due justice. Inadequacy of punishments that are awarded under the Act is one of the main impediments standing in the way of implementation of various welfare measures. Courts generally take a lenient view of the offences under the Act and they let off the employers who are offenders with lighter punishment, which generally amounts to a fine of rupees 100. So the committee suggested amendment to section 36 of the Act. An employer is required to provide these workers living accommodation, but generally, in spite of the fact that the government gives loans and subsidies to the employers for construction of houses, progress in regard to these constructions is very poor. As I said earlier, very unhygienic and insecure houses are there where these people have to live. Even compensation to the workers in the event of house collapse is not given. 95 के आसपास स्पीड है, 2 कंटेंट वो लिखेंगे विद इन दैट 2 मिनट जस्ट नेक्स्ट लिखिए, रेडी, स्टार्ट इट. If you scan the history of the railways in this country, you will see that it was the presidency towns Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta that determined the pattern of our railways as well as our industrial and economic growth. The British, when they landed in this country, established trading centers called forts. In Chennai, it was Fort St. George. In Calcutta, it was Fort St. William's. And in Mumbai, it was merely a fort, and there was one in Surat also. It is these trading establishments which determine the pattern of government, the pattern of administration, and even every other pattern under the British regime. They constructed the railways, they established the industries, and they located their armies with reference to these three presidency towns. This idea of the presidency towns determining the pattern of our social structure, industrial advancement, and the system of our railways still persists. That is the mental lag. Not is hampering the vision of the Planning Commission, the Railway Board, and the Railway Ministry. Sir, once I happened to travel from London to Rome by train. Another time I had to travel from Moscow to Leningrad by train. Nowhere did I find on the continent of Europe lines of varying breadth. It is all a uniform gauze. So, is it in Russia? It may be 6 feet there. In America, in every industrially advanced country, you find that the gauze is uniform. This very country which ruled us, namely the United Kingdom, had inside its border a uniform gauze, but they inflicted 3 systems of gauze on India. They thought that would perpetuate what is called their domination, or in the negative sense that it would impede the industrial and economic growth of India. Secondly, it would make India always the customer and purchaser of lines and locomotives and rolling stock from the United Kingdom. In the old days, I am told it is the government which built the broad gauge line, and it is the private companies that took to this meter gauze or the narrow gauze. Though they may not have had the distinction of private and public sector in view, then it now appears that what the so-called public sector then did has been good, and what the private sector then did has been to our disadvantages. I would appeal to these agencies to introduce a uniform gauze throughout India. We are trying to give publicity to ministerial activities, and it is inevitable that some such publicity should be given because ministers are in charge of the government. But one abroad does not get a real idea of what is happening in the country. I would like to suggest for the consideration of the External Affairs Ministry that they should send a fortnightly assessment of what is happening in India, written dispassionately, not to please a minister or to highlight something that he had done, but to give an objective assessment of what is going on in the country. In the old days, when the British government was in existence, such fortnightly reports used to be sent by various state governments, and I think a beginning can be made in that direction in this matter. The other point I would like to suggest is that publicity is a complicated and technical matter. The Foreign Service, as it is constituted today, does not have sufficient training in publicity. The estimates committee, which went into the demands of the External Affairs Ministry, mentioned about the methods of training which have been adopted. But since our Foreign Service men are not trained in publicity work, and one sees, for example, that a lot of confusion has arisen in the United States over Ambassador Nehru's statement, I think the External Affairs Ministry might well set up a committee of members of Parliament who are conversant with external publicity and some newspapermen to advise the External Affairs Minister from time to time. I do not think that the committee will ask for information which is confidential or secret, but they can assist the newspapermen. There are a handful of competent men who would be willing to serve on the committee in an advisory capacity. They would be able to tell the External Affairs Ministry what should be done in order that our news publicity abroad is better. I might mention also that the Estimates Committee had recommended the creation of a cultural cell. Sir, to my mind, we have also to be clear in our mind regarding the objective of a rural industrialization. Do we mean to have only diversification of rural economy, and are we going to have rural industrialization only in order to give some help to those who find themselves unemployed during a certain period of the year? Are we aiming at utilizing local resources and meeting local needs through diversification of rural economy, or have we a more fundamental objective in mind when we are trying to industrialize the rural areas? Without this, I am afraid rural industrialization will not be possible. 90 की स्पीड है, लास्ट कंटेंट लिखेंगे 80 की स्पीड पे. Ready? Start it. May I, Madam, draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to an important committee set up by the Government of India in 1998 under the chairmanship of Mr. Nigoi, who was asked to inquire into the various problems of railway road coordination. Their preliminary report appeared some time ago, and it was even circulated to all the state governments for their opinion. But to my regret, I have to say that the work of this committee has been very much hindered as a result of the indifference and, may I say, callous negligence on the part of the state governments as well as on the part the ministry concerned in taking up this question and in pursuing it so that we may be able to have a clear and comprehensive picture of the transport situation in the country. Now, railway transport, like any other mode of transport, is suffering under a major handicap. The handicap being that we do not know, nor does the railway minister know, that the exact quantum of transport requirement in the country is and what the rising demand in which the railways are expected to cater to in future. Certain targets which have been worked out in the 10th plan have been given to us. In the 9th plan, we were given certain targets. But unfortunately, Madam, may I point out that all those targets were either gross underestimates or exaggerations. Throughout, we have seen that we have not been able to have a well coordinate and progressive development of the transport system and in particular the railway system in the country. So, anything we suggest today will have that kind of air of unreality without knowing fully or adequately what exactly the transport needs in the country, or we are not in a position to discuss or dilate upon the problems or the railways or the transport itself. Madam, last year when I was speaking on the budget, I pointed out that there had been planning of some sort, but within this planning there had not been sufficient planning in the functioning of the administration. There has not been planning in carrying out the various phases of the program enunciated in the plan or in the budget. Frequently, we come across the statement by the Honorable Minister that the railways have not been able to fulfill certain things. In this connection, it will be interesting to note the talk of the Honorable Railway Minister about the schools and high schools for the Indian Railways. Staff might be appointed for him and office space might be provided for him. It is because of this that certain misgivings have arisen in the minds of some of the members, and they want it to be made perfectly clear that the staff will be appointed by the ex-president, but will be appointed by the ex-president, and it will be his wishes and his desires that will be taken into account when a particular person is being appointed. Also, regarding the office which is engaged for him, his wishes should be taken into account so that he knows what would be a convenient place for him and he may try to get that place. Another reason for insisting on what I consider to be an important detail is that if the government appoints the staff for the ex-president, then automatically they become government servants because they have been appointed by the government. It may be that in the rules clarification might be attempted whereby they may be exempted from some of the service conduct rules which are applicable to normal government servants. But even there, it will be much better that this should not be left in any doubt and that these persons that are appointed to assist the ex-president in his secretarial task are appointed by the ex-president himself. They would be the staff of the ex-president and would not be appointed by the government for the ex-president and would not be government servants. This ought to be made quite clear so that the ex-president has got all the right of determining the service conditions of the people appointed by him, of course, subject to the overall limit which has been provided and to my mind rightly provided in the bill. Within that overall limit, perhaps it will be much better to leave the rest of the matter to the President himself so that we may also express our further confidence in the President to the effect that he would utilize it with discretion and with all sense of responsibility and fair play and taking into account the interests of the public and of the public exchequer too. Another point which also needs some clarification is regarding the payment to be made for the secretarial assistance and for the secretarial staff. Normally, government rules require that whenever any such demand is made on the public exchequer or on the consolidated fund of India, a certain formality has to be done through, and that formality of accounting has to be in a prescribed form. 800 के आसपास वर्ड है और 80 की स्पीड है, फ्लैक्सेशन 85 तक का है और ये आपके 500 सेट पूरे हो गए हैं विद फ्रेजोग्राफी केसी रिव्यू सेट नंबर 6 के।